In this video, we're going to be looking at steering. It has been a while since I have done a video to camera, but it's just me and you today. There are three things I'm going to run through here today. Number one, the techniques that are suitable for the driving test and what you're permitted to do for the driving test. Number two, to talk about the recommended methods for steering. And three, why steering can be so tricky. As a general rule of thumb, there are two main techniques when it comes to steering. One, you use the pull and push technique, which is sort of shuffling the steering wheel between two hands. And two, you use the hand over hand, which is crossing your hands, both of which are suitable for the driving test. So we've got the crossing the hands technique, which would be I'm constantly bringing my hands over like that, and then I cross my hands back. Now I've got to be honest, for me, that almost feels a little bit awkward because I just don't do it anymore. I've ingrained the pull and push technique into my style of steering so that actually feels a little bit awkward. Then you have the traditional pull and push technique. The traditional pull and push technique is to reduce the risk of something majorly going wrong, especially when it comes to airbag. It also means that my hands are always on the wheel and I should have full control. This is the technique that the examiner is recommending, or that the DVSA are recommending that you should do. However, it does have drawbacks when it comes to steering quickly. So if you look at my hands as I approach this junction here, I'm not going to be covering my horn in the middle, which is also my airbag, and it just means probably going to have to take this corner a little bit more slowly. It's going to be much more measured, much more in control, and ultimately it's safer. If you are steering with your hands over the steering wheel like so, and this airbag was to go off, there's only one place that your hand can end up. If you're steering like so, where you're putting your hand underneath the steering wheel like that, if that airbag was to go off, I'd hate to think what would happen to your wrist. So it's not recommended for your hand to be coming across the steering wheel. However, we see it all the time. People steer like that all the time. If you steer like that on your driving test though, you are not going to fail. It's not going to affect. The only thing the examiner's concerned about is, have you got control of the steering wheel? If this video is being of any value to you, I'd really appreciate if you hit the like button and hit that subscribe button, because I'm getting to my 1,000 and I need you. Now there are also other methods of steering. Now the other technique is the technique that I use, which is the hybrid. Now what I do is I bring my hand over the steering wheel and I turn the steering wheel like so. So I come back to the pull and push technique to finish it off. It's hybrid because my hand comes across the airbag. All three of these techniques are good enough to pass a test. What the examiner wants to see is that you don't lose control of your steering. I could even be driving like this. I could have even only one hand on the steering wheel. I'm not going to recommend it because if I hit a pothole or something, or if I lose control of my car, it's going to be much harder for me to regain that control if I'm only using one hand. I also wouldn't recommend it because if I was an examiner watching you, I'd be watching you like a hawk to see if you have any difficulties with steering, and then I'll be highlighting it to you, giving you the recommended methods. So why is steering so tricky? One of the main issues that people have when it comes to steering is they're looking in the wrong place. If you're looking at your steering wheel, you're not looking the direction of travel, and that can cause a major issue.
If you're cycling, you don't look at your handlebars, but you look the direction you're traveling. If you looked at your handlebars for too long, you'd be in a pile on the floor.
Now, when it comes to the techniques of practicing this, how can I improve my overall control of the steering wheel? There are three things that I need to be considering. Number one, how much steering do I actually need for the turn? Now I suggest you initially do this really, really slowly. So as you're coming around the corner, you're just going to start turning the wheel. Now also what you need to pay attention to is that line in the middle of the road there. If I don't cross that line, I should be okay. Now as the wheel starts coming back again, I need to think about getting the wheel straight again. So before I'm actually straight, I'm going to be bringing the wheel slowly backwards. Do this slowly to begin with, because if you do it too fast, you're going to lose control of the car. Okay, number two, making sure that I don't overpower it when I'm coming around the corner. Now there's a direct correlation between the power in my pedals and how long it takes me to steer. When I'm turning a corner, if I put too much power in, I'm just simply not going to be able to keep up. If I take this corner as normal, let's count how many seconds. So 1001, 1002, 1003, And my car, to get my steering round to straight, is just gonna take time. It's gonna take 3-4 seconds to get my car straight. So if I overpower it, whatever steering I've put on to take that bend, I'm just gonna end up oversteering. Same with the understeer. Be very, very careful when you're understeering, but also pay attention to what you're looking at. If you're looking in the right places, you're gonna be okay.
So just to make this perfectly clear, an oversteer would be that you're steering too much, and an understeer would mean that you're not steering enough.
And the third thing that you need to be doing when it comes to improving your steering wheel, it's effectively using the steering wheel. And I mean using all the steering wheel. You don't need to use all the steering wheel all the time. But if I'm turning a corner and I'm only doing these tiny little shuffles and I'm just doing the steering wheel like this, again, talking about the second thing that I just spoke about, I'm gonna have to take much, much longer to get the car straight by taking that long to turn the steering wheel. As I'm turning, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use more of the steering wheel, turn the corner nice and slowly, but using all of that wheel, and then bringing it back again, nice and slowly, using all of that wheel, being efficient, but ultimately, when I get more comfortable with that, I'll be able to take the corner at a normal, safe speed. Now, I will put a caveat in this, is that the type of steering that I'm talking about is for general everyday use. If you're a racing driver, they probably would recommend that you use the hand over hand technique, or not even the hand over the hand technique, but, and again, I'm not a racing driver, they may even allow you, for example, to be turning the steering wheel like so, depending on what you need. But here, it's just not enough. If I lock my hands in like that, and I keep my hands locked onto the wheel, as I come around that corner, you could see I had nowhere else to go. I had to release the steering wheel, otherwise I lose control and I'm going to end up not steering enough, which will end up into an understeer. This is another reason why understeering is something that happens quite often with people that lock their hands on the wheel. Now, the pull and push technique is, you'll notice that my hands are mirroring each other. In fact, so if I'm turning here, I'm going to start doing the normal pull and push. You see how my hands go down and up, both of them, and then down and then up, and I'm feeding the steering wheel between both hands. Practice this stationary, maybe using a plate, maybe using a frisbee, something that's going to assist you. Dry steering is also something we should talk about if we're going to do a steering video. Dry steering is when you turn the steering wheel and you're not moving. If you're maneuvering your car, you want to be able to get the wheels turning slightly as you're moving. That's going to reduce the risk of damaging your tires. That's also going to reduce the risk of damaging the mechanism of actual turning the steering wheel within the steering column. If you are struggling when it comes to reversing maneuvers, and you feel that you need to bring the car to a stop while you're getting your positioning right, that's understandable, but do understand that long-term damage you're going to be doing to your car if you do that repeatedly. The last thing that's connected with steering that's also going to have a massive impact is when you're reversing. People get really confused when they're reversing because when they're going backwards, they're not thinking about the direction they're traveling, they're still thinking about the front of the car. If you do that, it's going to completely discombobulate you and you're going to be so confused and you're going to be trying to work it out. Now, even if I try to work out which way I need to turn the steering wheel to get the nose to go, it's just too much. So if I'm going forwards, I turn the wheel left if I want to turn left. If I'm going backwards and I want the back of the car to turn left, I also turn left. Left is left, right is right. So I stick it in reverse. I'm now thinking about the back of the car. If I look left, I'm turning left. So as I go to do a parallel park, for example, and I want the back to go to the left, so I'm going to turn my wheels to the left. Now there's a cyclist coming and another car coming. So I'm just going to wait. So again, I turn the wheel to the left, looking over my shoulder, make sure it's nice and safe. And then I'm going to straighten it by turning it back to the right. Now I want the back to move away from the curb. So then I turn to the right. And then I straighten it up and I turn that way. So whichever way I am turning, thinking about the back of the car, the front of the car, that's the direction I'm going to turn my steering wheel.
And one last very important point when it comes to reversing, make sure you turn your wheel effectively and quickly. Don't turn the wheel slowly, otherwise you will not get the required result.
If you're struggling with left turns or right turns, then follow either one of these two videos next. If this video has been of value to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you want more content, and I will see you in the next one. Get well out.